You're listening to Anne Diamond here on BBC Radio Berkshire, and today we're talking about Huntington's disease. And you've been hearing from Olympic rower Sarah Winkless, who has the Huntington's, and she was very much talking, weren't you, about how the fact that you weren't going to let it stop you living the life you wanted to live. Well, meet another woman who's done exactly the same thing, or got the same attitude as you. She's Paula Mayer, and she joins me now. Paula, you were diagnosed with Huntington's at a young age, weren't you?
No, I haven't been tested yet, Anne, for the disease.
I beg your pardon. It says here in front of me, I shall shoot my team of researcher. Okay, well then the next question is, why would you write the book?
It was actually out of my professional experience of 25 years of helping people with their problems in the job that I did in HR, in the corporate workplace, finding that many people have many challenges. My challenge happened to be HD within my family, and the book really was a way of capturing all those daily challenges that people have to help them live their life in a much easier way. For me, obviously, I had to cope with Huntington's in my family, and how that would or may not impact me, given I haven't had the test yet.
It was your mother, was it?
It was, yes.
Yeah, rather like Sarah, who watched how the condition affected her mother. It's interesting. You've called your book, and I hope I've got this right, "Your Life, Your Way: A Practical Guide to Getting Your Shit Together." Now, I'm only going to say that word once, but why call it that? Does that infer that life does get very, very chaotic when you get the diagnosis or when you get the illness, and you do have to learn how to manage things?
Yes, absolutely. I had a very traumatic childhood with my mother with Huntington's. She wasn't actually diagnosed until I was 14, and she covered it with alcohol. So she was basically an alcoholic. And back in the 80s, there was no education about the disease. The GP wouldn't have necessarily recognised it. And I had as I said, very traumatic childhood, and we lived with it at home until she was sectioned when I was 14.
Oh, that's awful, isn't it? And I can imagine that the way it affected her life must have been, you as a family watching her wouldn't have known whether to blame the disease or the alcohol or whatever, because it's all so bound up in each other.
Yeah, no, there was no knowledge of the disease, to be honest. It was her mother had the disease, but we only found this out when she actually went for diagnosis after she'd been sectioned. Unfortunately, I don't think my story is necessarily uncommon in the HD community. There are people who have it in their families, and because it's not picked up and because it's not diagnosed, people cover it in other ways, or they don't go to the doctors, and then it ends in quite a traumatic need to do something about it, which was done at that point. And so similarly to Sarah, when you find out that you have this in your family, you go through that I suppose that terrible decision of, do you find out and do you not find out? For me, it had robbed me of much of my childhood. All you want to be as a child is normal, and have a normal family, and I wasn't. And I wasn't in any way. I couldn't bring friends back to the house, and I used to go to friends a lot because they were my escape. And my decision not to test was really much around, it had already robbed me of many years. I didn't really want to know and have it rob another 20. And so the book really came about living in the present, and the first chapter of the book is very much about living life in today, not in the past, not in the future, or about what others think, or what sometimes we tell ourselves in a negative way, but to very much live in the present. And that's really what I've done for the last 25 years, and been very driven through that.
It's a very personal choice then, isn't it? Deciding it, once you know it could be in the family, taking that decision to get tested, very, very big personal choice. Let me introduce you to each other over the radio, actually. Paula meet Sarah, Sarah meet Paula.
Hi, Paula, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, so you made a deliberate decision not to get tested because you didn't want to be defined by the outcome of that test. But Sarah, you did. Why? What's the difference between you two?
I find it interesting. I noticed you said you hadn't been gone for the test yet, Paula. I think for me, I was at Cambridge. I had a similar experience in my childhood, Paula, in that we didn't know what was wrong with Mum. But as I was looking at the neuroscience lectures that I was at, it became clear to me there was something amiss with her brain, and there was a bit missing, and clearly that was the Huntington's. And I guess, at university, knowledge is power, learning, and for me, being at 50-50, which every child of a single Huntington's parent is, for me, was no worse than being positive. And I felt by being tested I could come out as negative and that would be a great result, but I was prepared to hear that I was positive. And so I think it was just a very simple and quick choice.
Did it turn you into a rower? I mean, was it that sort you thought, no, I'm not going to let this define me, I'm going to do something else?
I think there were some really good people around me that supported me when I heard, because clearly, you know, I kind of walked out and you're in shock and, you know, you do the good British thing and go to the pub, especially when you're a student.
Yeah.
And I was already beginning to row, and there were moments where I was like, oh, I can't do this, I've got Huntington's. And I had a coach, actually, who put his arm around me and went, Sarah, I love you, but you haven't got Huntington's today. Get back on there and train. And he was brilliant with me, because I just needed someone to push me in that way and support me at that time. And I think the 4-year cycles of Olympics, when you have an uncertain future, are quite a safe amount of time. So I think it did really help me. I think it probably made me step away a little bit earlier than I could have done. I could have done the 2012 Olympics, but I wanted to use my brain. I wanted to use my brain while it's hopefully still at its best, and contribute to sport and life in a different way. So.
And Paula, that's basically the message of your book, isn't it? Don't be defined by the disease. Just live the life that you've always wanted to live anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, everyone has challenges in their life, and, you know, our issue is HD. You get other families with Parkinson's and motor neuron. It doesn't really matter what the disease is, or even if you have a disease or not really. The book really is about the small challenges. So I have chapters, everything from shifting anger to dealing with guilt, dealing with emotional baggage. And for me, this is the small stuff. This is the kind of everyday stuff that people go through, that stores in their brain, that when something happens, something more traumatic or bigger happens, they can feel very overwhelmed. And it's just a very practical book that says this is what it is and this is why it happens, and here are some practical tips and strategies to help you get through it so you can do them for yourself.
Sounds fantastic, Paula. Well done. Thanks very much indeed. The book is called Your Life, Your Way, A Practical Guide to Getting Your together.